Welcome to another episode of the Pick and Flow podcast. My name is Dave Nixon, and this is the first podcast of this iteration. There's been a few iterations where I've got a lovely guest, not just online, because actually in person.
In person. It's nice to be here.
Jenna Louise.
So nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been really lovely to reconnect with you, even though there was never a disconnect, but a reconnect with you. Really in the last couple of months more than anything. I saw you, and I've known you for many years.
Since 2015, right? 14 or 15.
Probably been 14.
Yeah.
So it's coming on, will that be 9 years?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it would have only been, we moved into the gym here like March 2013. So it would have been pretty early on then.
Yeah.
And then many different paths from there. However, I saw a little post where you injured your foot, and you were like, if I may, oh my God, guys.
Actually,
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I don't know.
And knowing you well enough, I was like, I'd love for you to come to one of the retreats. And I actually look back on the last couple of messages, and they were left. I think I was left on red. So I was like,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the worst.
Yeah. I think it was left on busy, maybe.
Okay, let's call it busy.
Yeah.
Left on busy. Yeah.
So, but it was in reference to a couple of other bits and pieces. But I saw that, and I was like, I think if you're ready or open, I don't really know what the right word is. Then you're probably going to really enjoy this retreat. And since then, I think it's been, and the same with my team, Jamie and Megan, and I know they've been talking and working with you as well. It's really been lovely having, and I think this is for myself, like a mature energy back into that space.
Yeah.
I mean, a mature youthfulness, maybe.
Oh, I like the youthfulness.
Yeah. I mean, play is extremely important. Even Dr. Huberman told me that was important.
There you go.
So that's why I have a PlayStation.
Oh.
It makes sense.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm a PlayStation fan.
Are you?
Yeah, but I can only play for very short periods of time because I get bored easy.
Right.
Yeah, holding my attention is a challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely games that would pay a lot of money to hold your attention.
Yeah.
But look, either way, it's like I said, it's been great to reconnect with you.
Yes.
Especially, I guess, and that's where I think this conversation, I wrote down a note of time in the industry, but it's not just that. And I said to you earlier, there's a difference between 10 years experience and 1 year experience 10 times. And so if you were to look at when we first met, let's call it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And what's changed since then, that's, I think, what's going to be really healthy for this discussion. But before we get into that,
Yes.
some people may not know who you are.
Oh, you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me the question that I dread, aren't you?
What's your spirit animal?
Oh! I actually don't officially know what the spirit animal is, but I want to say horse.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm so drawn to horses. I don't know, there's something so magical. I know that's a very cliche word to pair with a horse, but there is something so magical and so spiritual and just so beautiful, I guess, about a horse that I resonate with so well.
There you go.
But I don't ride horses.
No, well, you'd be riding yourself. That would be weird. It's the tongue tasting itself.
Wow.
So.
And this is what I absolutely love back in my life is Dave's humour.
Playful.
Or playful, yeah.
Huberman told me. Yeah. But anyway, yes,
Sorry.
you will have to do a slight introduction, but you as a human, this is where I think it can get a little bit confusing sometimes.
Yeah,
It's
what
like,
do you do?
My name's Dave, and I did this, and I did that, and this is what I do. It's just like, Jenna, outside of all that,
Yeah.
tell me about you.
Okay, it's really hard to know where to start, but I came out of my mom. No.
Yeah, well, maybe that isn't the right question. Maybe it's like, given where you are now,
Yeah.
What do you do with your day, and what's important to you?
Yeah, my days are so different. Every day is different for me.
Yeah.
In terms of the structure of my day, because like I said before, holding attention is a challenge for me, and I like to keep things exciting and new, but also still have some bare bones that I'm able to come back to myself. And so self has been a huge focus for me over the last year and a half, 5 years, but most specifically the last year and a half. And yeah, so my days look different every day, but at the same time, my mornings and my evenings are relatively the same. So I have like some pretty strict structure around my mornings and my evenings. And the mornings because they prime my day, and the evenings because it primes me for my next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, my days are generally around training is my priority. You know, I have to get up and train every morning. That's just for me, my mind, and my mind state. And then I move into whatever I have on that day. That could be photo shoots, it could be filming, it could be consulting to a number of the gyms that I consult to. It's hard because I have so many. I spread my energy across so many different facets of the health and fitness industry.
Yeah, and you've done a really different approach, right? Compared to the standard approach of, which is very similar to me, of like becoming a PT, doing personal training.
Yeah.
And then moving into the space where you work now, which is predominantly online, but also in the delivery of, I guess, to bricks and mortar,
yes,
rather than the operation of bricks and mortar.
Yes.
Is a completely different role within that health and fitness space. And it's really interesting. And I'm not sure, let me know about your experience of this. You may not get it as much, especially if you've got clearly like a decent following, I say, in the sense of attention, right? Whereas people are like, oh, you're a PT. And I'm like, sort of. And it's not nothing wrong with being a personal trainer.
Yeah.
It's just not really what I do. But it's easy to say, yeah, sure, I work
it's a
in
part
that space.
of, you know. I mean, for me, that's definitely my answer. It's like people ask me, do I coach? I'm like, well, yes, I do. I do still coach. But there's different facets to how I coach and who I coach and how I deliver my coaching. So for me, majority of it is online, and I have my own training and nutrition platform. So I do still coach in that sense, but majority of that is in the online space. And then I would call it consulting rather than coaching coaches.
Yep.
So in order to educate them and to get them to be better coaches and just to realize that for themselves more than anything. So I try to guide and facilitate rather than telling them this is how you be a better coach.
Yeah.
So
the interesting, like I mentioned then, is like become a PT, be a successful PT, shift to online, be successful online, and then move to coaching coaches. It's not a clean transition. And the role that you play within the industry now, that from what I can see, it was not the beaten path.
No.
And so for you then, going through that, like, what was it like going through those transitions, not knowing the future?
It was actually such a challenge initially because I haven't always been full-time in the industry. So I spent 13 years in the government in a job that I really didn't like. But I always knew in myself that I wanted to be full-time, whatever that looks like for people. For me, it's completely different to what it might look like for somebody else.
Yeah.
But I wanted my majority of my career to be within the health and fitness industry, not sitting behind a desk and working in the government. However, at the time I was in a relationship that sort of didn't allow me to sort of move outside of that. So then, you know, I had to take a bit of a risky leap of faith and basically got to a point where I had just left everything that I ever knew and moved to Sydney just to pursue my career full-time in the fitness industry. So call it recklessness, I don't know, but I've never regretted taking that step.
Yeah.
Because first of all, gave me an opportunity to grow so much. It challenged me incredibly personally and also with my career. I never doubted that I could make it work because I knew I could make it work. Like, that's what I had something to prove. At that point, I had something to prove.
Yeah.
Because I was told for so long that being in the fitness industry was not a career and I couldn't make a career out of it and all that sort of stuff. So in a sense, at that point, I had something to prove.
Sure. Yeah.
Which also fueled my success.
Yeah.
You know. But now I think the transition from, you know, leaving the government into the fitness industry, it happened within a week. And I had already had history of being in the industry because I'd I played with it for years while I was in the government.
Yeah.
And I built a community while I was in the government. I was studying. I was in the government. I was running my dog grooming business at the same time. and then I took long service leave from the government so I could study fitness. And I did that full time in my long service leave. I actually got my the opportunity to study my fitness certificates as a result of winning the Oxygen magazine cover girl competition.
Yes, I remember.
Because at that time it was so expensive. It was like $7,000 or something like that
to
be able, to get your certs, like master certification.
Through AIF?
Yes.
At the time?
Yes.
Yeah, AIF were through the roof.
Yeah. Crazy. And so that was one of the prizes that came as a result of, and that's why I went.
Olsen, hey?
Yeah, well, that's why I went into the competition, because I'm like, I know I need to be in the fitness industry and this is my in. And I entered the Oxygen comp 2 years in a row. First year I got in the top 5. I didn't get it and I was really bummed out about it. And I know I should be proud about being in the top 5, sure. But I wanted number 1. And so I went again and I won the next year, which was great because then it gave me the opportunity to gain my certification. It was the best 3 months of at that stage of my life, because it gave me an opportunity to feel what it was like to be doing what I loved every single day.
Yeah, right. And how long ago was that?
God, that was, like 11 years ago.
Like 2012?
Yeah, like early days. But it was beautiful. It was so nice. And then I did further study, like nutrition and all that sort of stuff after it. And and then I did work as a PT for a period of time, but then I didn't spend too much time coaching face-to-face. I then moved pretty much straight online, especially when I moved from the government to Sydney. Straight away I went online. Didn't do any face-to-face at that point. I built the structure to get online and started coaching that way, which I found was really cool. And it was a completely new realm for me. But since then, it's just been, I've been able to build an audience. I've also grown as a human and as a soul, and I've gained so much more respect for, myself and just the physical being, and I don't know, like a spiritual side, if you want to say. Like I've definitely delved deeper into the spiritual side, which has allowed me to apply a different angle to my coaching and to life in general. So one thing that has been consistent though is the flow. So I've always been in a state of allowing. I've never really pushed back on anything. I've just been open and curious about anything and everything, and non-reactive, really, as much as I possibly could. And I think everything for me has just naturally flowed and come to me at the right timing. And I think there's so much beauty in that. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
it's okay. It's a lovely guideline, right, of like the transition that goes through, because it's not clean.
It's far from clean.
Yeah.
And
which is the cleanest way to do it.
Yes.
That's the
irony. But I think that I don't know, there was definitely a point where I released the pressure of, well, I'm not, I put a lot of pressure on myself because I wasn't structuring my business or my career the typical way.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a huge transition for me to take a step back and go, okay, your career looks like this, and that's okay. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's.
Yeah.
And since doing that, the weight off my shoulders has been so amazing.
How long ago was that?
Like, I'd have to say about 6 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
But I will say, and I mentioned this earlier, the last year and a half I've had a profound shift in all areas of my life, like all areas.
And so what was the leverage on that then? What instigated that shift last 8 months?
My separation with my ex. And so the reason I think I've had such a profound shift is because I've never been by myself.
I was waiting for that, yeah.
Never have I ever been by myself. So I left home at 17. I moved in with a boyfriend at that time. I married him. We separated, and then I moved in with another partner, and we were there. So I had two major relationships, 7-year relationships. And then the most recent one, which is not so recent now, that was 6 years, and that was very character building. That was a very different type of relationship for me.
Sure.
And extremely character building, beautiful soul. Like, he has a beautiful soul. But for me, it was just such a challenge to be in that relationship. And then eventually we decided that it was best to part ways, and it was so scary for me. And that's why I held on for so long, because I was so fearful of being alone. And I didn't even know how to do it. Like, I didn't know how to live by myself. I didn't know how to, I just couldn't see it. I couldn't vision it. And I can see everything. Like, generally I can see my future.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really struggled with. So when we did separate, I moved straight away, pretty much like within a week. I found a place in the Shire in Sydney, and got an apartment. Talk about a downgrade, 1-bedroom place where I'm used to like 4 or 5 bedrooms. I had to leave my dogs. I left my obviously my partner at the time, and we found comfort in one another still, because we were going through the same thing. But at the same time, there was still a point that I had to say, because I knew for myself I had to make a change. We need to completely separate for me to be able to take this transition and to take it seriously, and for me to be okay.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and I would have to say it took a good solid 3 months for me to feel any type of normality. When I moved to Sydney, it was a week or so before I found a training community. So it didn't take me long to find that, which was such a huge help for me. And now they're legitimately like my most favorite people to hang around. You know, this community that I train with, the yard gym, and like I've met so many beautiful people on the back of that as well. I actually have friends. They're not friends of anybody else's. They're my friends. And so there's so much magic has happened from putting myself out of that comfort into the discomfort of, you know, facing my fears. And then I did find the night times really hard. Yep. The night times were the biggest challenge for me. And I always, you know, I didn't want to be at home. I stayed out for as long as I could. And then basically by the time I got home, I'd eat and go to bed, and then everything should be fine.
Sure, yeah.
But I don't know.
So what was your lesson in that?
The lesson was I needed to face the fear of being alone. But at the same time, I'm still learning from that. I'm still doing the work. Like, I love being alone now. So to the point where I'm like, I think I like being alone a little bit too much now. So I'm worried, how do I invite somebody into my life?
Yeah.
So that's going to be my next challenge, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. There's been so much work that I've been able to do and to dive into, based off my own decisions to help myself and my past trauma, my childhood, my upbringing, to understand myself, to love myself.
Yeah.
And so just out of doing that and facing a fear, so much beauty has come from it.
Yeah.
And still coming from it.
The fear, I mean, it's an interesting concept, right? Because fear will usually point to, like, fear doesn't exist outside of us. Yep. And so fear is usually pointing to something. And like, there's different types of fear. Like, there's a bear in my house kind of fear.
Yeah.
Which is that's not very rational here in Canberra.
Yeah, no.
Whereas in Canada, that might be a little bit more rational. Yeah. But there's that kind of fear. But then there's a fear of, like, what if I'm alone? And I relate to that. Like, I grew up 3 older sisters, family of 6, and then their parents split when I was 10. So then it was my mum and I down the coast with her partners, who she didn't have the most gentleman choice of men. There's a whole other conversation on that, but I've talked about it at lengths. But point there being was then I struggled to be alone a lot throughout especially my 20s.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where it's like, and that's where I relate to what you're sharing. It's just like, I actually remember one time I had a bad breakup, and then I was absolutely kicked to the gutter. And there's more details of that, but it was what it was. But then I was like, I'd be a really good boyfriend. I just remember thinking this, and like, I would do all these things. And then I had this thought, and the thought that came up to me was, right now would I date myself? And I had a visceral reaction of like, oh no.
Oh God.
And I'm like, oh fuck. Okay,
oh no.
Right,
maybe I need to ask myself that.
Yeah. So well, at that time, right, it was like, okay, I'm choosing to be around these people not because I want them around.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no. And so, the term the dark night of the soul is an exceptionally important term.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes fall into the category of like too feminine, or same with like self-love or whatever. Self-love at its core is self-acceptance.
Yeah.
That is absolutely at its core. Self-love is not massages. Self-love is not having a nice warm bath or buying a little thing online. Like it's fundamentally what's behind the intention of all the actions we do every single day.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to self-acceptance, which is human, neither masculine nor feminine. And then looking at the dark night of the soul is simply, am I willing to walk down a path that doesn't have a clear path, a clear future, and learn to trust myself down that path regardless. And like I learned this in business, where early on in business, I really trusted my business partner because I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
Then later in business, I trusted my business partner because I trusted myself.
Yeah.
Same thing, different intention, and it's massive.
Yeah.
But that dark night of the soul, especially for individuals that may really struggle with the idea of being by themselves, is foundational for facing what is really a condition upon worth at its core.
Very true. Very true. I'm so thankful I did that work, though.
Well, it's sort of like, the work sits there anyway. It just piles up. So it's just like, do your paperwork.
Exactly what it did.
Yeah.
Exactly. I spent the majority of my life avoiding it.
Yeah.
So.
And so how does that feed now into your career? Now, career, here's, when I say the word career in that sense as well, and this is how I wear it, is that it's my body of work.
Yes.
It's not really separate. It's not separate to who I am.
Yeah.
It's a body of work that I put together and put forward.
Yes.
I get to stand on the shoulders of giants in order to do so. So when I use the word career, that's what I really mean.
Yeah. For me, I trust myself more than I trust anybody, right? So, but it hasn't always been that way. I'm up until a year and a half ago, did not trust myself.
Sure.
Like I trusted other people because I didn't trust myself. And I don't know if that's even the right word, but I'm not sure how to put it, but I think it was more that I just didn't know if I had myself. But now I know I've got myself.
Gotcha.
Like I have got myself, and I am a person of my word. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I'll only do something if it feels right for me, if it energetically feels right for me at a soul level. Like I know if something is yay or nay for me. And if it's no, then I'm absolutely not going anywhere near it. Yeah. So now my days are intentional. You know, I get up and maybe they don't look the same every day, which is fine, but I live my life through intention and through flow. And yes, I do have things that I need to tick off in my day to day, but I just allow, like I'm more allowing. I have a level of awareness that I just allow what comes to come.
And does that mean that you didn't have that before?
I did not.
Right.
I did not, because I was somewhat being guided, pressured is probably a better word, to perform at a different level to what I felt was right for me.
By who?
My partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So by other.
Yes, by other. Yes,
Yeah.
and not through the not through like ill intention or anything like that. Just maybe them thinking that was helping me. Yeah. But in a sense, I needed to help myself.
Sure.
And I needed to have a level of connection with myself that I knew what I was, what I was capable of. Now I do know. Like, I know so much about myself that helps me in my everyday life, that helps me in my career, and helps me in my delivery to, engage in with other humans, and to give me a level of confidence to speak about what I know, and how to educate people. And also, energy is a massive.
And when you say energy, how are energy? Yeah. What do you like? I can gauge what I mean when I say energy, right? And with relation to people.
Yeah.
How do you use that word, and how do you know?
I try not to use the word energy because I don't try. I just do.
Okay.
And so just by being around, people feel something.
Okay.
From the feedback that they've given me, yep. They feel a certain way.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yep. So actual energy. I'm trying to be careful with my words because
it literally is calibrating.
Yes.
Right? Because otherwise, it's a really interesting concept, and I think it's exceptionally important.
Yeah.
Yet the difficulty is that sometimes, and this is what I find, that words like energy or intuition, yes. or things like that can be skimmed across.
Yes.
And so many people are using it, but they're meaning different things.
Yes.
Whereas clearly there's energy.
Yes.
That's not even a question whatsoever at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the kind of thing where it's like, I've listened to people talk about reading people's energy.
Yes.
And then they go to explain it, but what they're actually referring to is their gut feeling on previous experiences laid over someone,
mm-hmm.
which is very different to how the next person may use
yes.
it, right?
Yes.
And so it's literally going, and sometimes people don't ask the question, how are you using that? It's like, well, fuck, how am I using that? How do I know? But it's important and it exists. And so it's a kind of thing there of like, when for you, and read might not be the right word. I think what I'm hearing is feeling.
Yes.
When you feel somebody in that space.
Yeah.
How do you know? Yeah.
And that's I guess that's another element to whole energetic and feeling and all that sort of stuff, is that when you are with other energetic beings, you transmute your energies, and it's up to that person to determine that energy however they determine it, right? Yeah. So it's hard or observe it, yes. And so for me, I find that that's what I'm really good at doing, is observing.
Okay.
And so I feel, and if I can't just rely on that feeling alone to give me what that person might be trying to put across, for instance.
Yeah.
This is really hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, hey?
Yeah, it's so hard to explain. But I think the way I do my best work is just by being there and not trying to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just there, and I serve a purpose.
Sure.
When I'm in, and maybe I don't in some cases, maybe I don't, and that's okay.
Well, it's such a freeing concept, right? Because it's like, to somebody we won't, which is fine. Like, that's neither here nor there.
Yes.
And that actually allows that person to have meaning, that there is no purpose in my presence, or whatever the case might be, or they lay a previous experience over me or you or whoever today as if that's now.
Yeah.
Right? So,
but I think there's awareness in that. So I feel that I'm very aware of what's being not accepted, what's being well received, and what's not. So that I think there's just that level of self-awareness in just being, and being able to feel that, read it.
So I didn't ask you an easy question, Joe, but it's an important one.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, because I absolutely relate to what you're sharing, right? And one of the things that I've learned to do through, I would say trial and error, but it's error and trial.
Yeah.
Is to hold the tension. Yeah. And so what that means for me is to be like, okay, something feels off here. I'm going to engage with it and be like, hey, I've just noticed this. What, is everything all right? Is there something you want to discuss? What's going on with this? Who hurt you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How deep do you want to go? But in that sort of circumstance, and being like, holding the tension has been a fundamental shift in how I communicate, how I relate, how I coach. And when I say coach, on the gym floor to some degree, there's a yes to that, but in what's called developmental coaching, which is fundamentally coaching to people's structure of mind.
Yeah.
Right? And so an example of that in a coaching conversation is asking somebody, well, here's a behavior that they don't like. And so what's the positive intention behind that behavior? And they go, oh, well, I don't know. It's like I said to you before about listening, it's just like, I just won't say anything. I don't respond. Ooh, I don't know either, mate. You're here for you, not me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to guess. I'm not saying that.
But I really enjoy that about you.
And just hold the space of the person, because it's them.
Yes.
And so, and that's acceptance. Space is acceptance.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing around holding that tension allows, let's say, for example, I'm going to use the term, general terms, my energy's off, for whatever reason. And then, let's say, as an example, you go, hey, notice this, what's going on?
Yeah.
Not from a sense of concern, from a sense of care.
Yeah.
And then just leave it. And I'm like, and if I was to respond, it's like, no, I'm fine. Okay.
Yes.
If you say you're fine, okay. Now, the person can absolutely hold a position of like, I go, I don't believe you, but I'm okay with being wrong.
Yeah.
I may not say that specifically, but I'm absolutely okay with being wrong. But I'm going to hold a position. And I'm completely okay with that position being wrong, because the truth will come out regardless. Which neither here nor there. But the ability to be able to go, hey, I've noticed this. Are you okay?
Yeah.
As opposed to, why are you doing that?
And now that you're addressing that, that's absolutely what I do.
Yeah.
And I find it challenging not to.
Yeah.
Because if I feel that somebody's energy is off, that's on me though. And I'm very aware of that.
When you say it's on you, what do you mean?
My interpretation of their energy is on me.
Well, it's also like the term in coaching, like, is calibrating.
Yes. Okay.
And it's just like, it's like, hey, I've noticed this. And they could be like, oh, sorry, I fucking don't know if I left the oven on.
Yeah.
And you're like, right.
Yes.
Then this individual doesn't go off in their own head about, well, this happened, that happened.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just a calibration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy that level of communication though. Like, I think that's what I dislike about communication is when people ask you, and I understand why people ask this way, but we've been so conditioned to it, but how are you, or what's new? Nothing drives me more crazy.
So, may I offer? What's new? It's just like, have you got a time frame?
Yes, that's...
Like, questions are so beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's new? It's like, have you got a particular area of my life that you're curious, like socks?
That's
like, what do you...
literally my answer.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, depends. What do you want to know?
I can tell you what's old. I still hate that fucking question.
Yes.
So that's not new.
It's so challenging because my true self wants to answer it wholeheartedly and completely, but that person does not want to stand there for a couple of hours, right? Maybe or maybe not.
I once they're going to be like, how much time you got?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just stay here. I'm going to get a box, tissues, come back.
And I mean, and that's not in a negative sense at all. Like so much positive stuff happens in my life, but how much do you want to know?
Yeah.
The highs and the lows and everything in between.
Yeah.
Again, that was another tangent. I don't know where I went off on a tangent.
Well, I mean, like it's still coming back to talking around energy and understanding that, and it's the one of the, I suppose, values that I've chosen to uphold for me is going, there's a lot of value to energy. There's a lot of value to how we make meaning. There's a lot of value to self-love. There's a lot of value to compassion, like all these things that are relatively you go further that way, they can really fall under sort of esoteric concepts.
Yeah.
How do we ground that? How do we make it actually practical? How can it be both? because it is both. And so that's something where it's like, well, with energy, I won't deny it.
Yeah.
Even if I did, it wouldn't matter because it still exists.
Yeah.
And so how do we interpret that, and how do we calibrate that, and how do we acknowledge the other individual that has their sense of energy and ourselves all at the same time? And so the beauty of that, and I think I mentioned this at the retreat you were at, where I talked about what's called a pre-post fallacy. And so what that's really speaking to in general terms, there's pre-rational, rational, and post-rational.
Yeah.
Or pre-modern, modern, post-modern.
Yeah.
And these aren't just collective terms of people think. It is literally how we develop as an individual through childhood through to adult development. And modern's really speaking to factual, scientific data. That's really what we're looking at with modern. Whereas pre-modern can sometimes sound very much like postmodern, which is this, or post-postmodern really, but which is this idea of like, spirit exists. So science may not be able to ground it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yet sometimes the pre-modern concepts sound postmodern, and those pre-modern can be quite mythological, quite abstract, quite esoteric, and there's beautiful lessons in it, but it sometimes might lose the capacity to actually talk about it in detail and ground it in examples as well. And so how do we get these really important concepts that are true and undeniable, and then ground it into something that's practical and useful for any other person?
And speaking on the same lines of the base retreat, that being away with you guys for that retreat was, I don't know, I felt like I have a sense of, I always want to continue to grow and to evolve, and, naturally that's going to happen. But I just have this hunger in me to continue to dive deep, whether that's in me or out, help me understand this existence, whatever you might want to call it. It gave me something I didn't expect. Well, many things I didn't expect, but more so it was, there was a few things. One we spoke about before, and I mentioned on the Moments seminar night before, that I found a beauty in the silence. And I've never been that person to be silent. Like I'm quite an energetic person, like as in like I'm an excitable character majority of the time. But what that has, being away with you guys on the base retreat, sort of gave me an opportunity to challenge, why do I feel like I need to project all the time and help people and be the first to break the silence because nobody else is talking, so here I'm going to break the awkward silence and just sit in the silence? For me, that was a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But I embraced it. I think I embraced it. And from coming home from that, I've applied that to my life now, and I'm okay with being silent. Like I'm okay with sitting in a room of people and not being the first one to speak, for instance, because I think that I have something to say and they have to listen, and that it might help. But sometimes it's all the help that they might need is just an ear, like I said to you before. So that was one of the beautiful outcomes that I received from being on a base retreat. And then the other one that stood out for me was, I guess, I don't want to say understanding humans because it's not it, but it's sort of given me an opportunity to hear. Again, this is sort of relating to the silence, but to hear others.
Yeah.
To actually hear them.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. It's like not about me. It's not always about me. And it sounds really egotistical for me to say that, I think everything is about me, because generally I don't think that.
Sure.
But it was really nice to be able to sit back and hear. to listen and hear.
Yeah.
Which sort of helped me see other people in a completely different light.
Yeah. And coupling that with learning to really, so listening for what people are saying, what people are not saying.
Yes.
Right. And then having structures, and that's the grounding that I used before of like, how do we actually put what people are, what they're saying, communicating, thinking into actual structures, not to go that equals that, but to have something to be able to interpret them better with.
Yeah.
So there is a shared meaning, shared value, shared experience, as opposed to you said this, so that means that to me, so that means that to you, and I'm just going to layer that over what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's where I, in that example, get in the way of actually seeing you for you and what you're saying, and what the intention, like what's on behalf of what you're sharing, right? Or what you're not sharing, what's that on behalf of?
Yeah.
And so we're starting to get past the words, and using that as as really like a ladder to climbing to a high level of understanding. So there's a beautiful quote, and each time I hear it, I understand it deeper. And the quote is so simple. It reads, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah. Okay.
And what that's really speaking to is home is the essence of within, without all the loudness of our structures of how we call them ego structures. I'm not using ego in any negative term, neutral, but our personality structures. So home is that we have a personal essence, which is an integration of personality into being. But if that's home, then, and we're walking each other there, it means that there's a constant opportunity with every single person that we interact with, including ourselves, to be able to see the structures that are stopping us from being home, right?
Yeah.
And so the ability to walk each other home is absolutely both beautiful and profound.
Yeah.
And something that I, when I do remember, it helps ground me into the step that I'm taking today.
Well, that is that hits home for me, because another thing that I've been able to take home is that, yes, I was curious before, but from the base retreat, I've realized just how curious I am about, like, not putting labels on anything. So I literally am just so curious about everything, but more so just in interaction with people. I'm so curious, and I now do not label anybody, whether I know them or not. Like, if you're a stranger or if you're a friend, like, it's just still being able to be curious has absolutely impacted my last month and a half since being home, and just engaging with people. But curiosity is fun.
And exceptionally youthful as well.
Yes, totally.
Now, speaking of youthful, I think you have to go pick up a couple of youths.
I do.
Yes.
They have their book week.
They have their book week.
Yeah, so they dressed up as one of May. She dressed up as one of the characters from Harry Potter. Don't ask me.
No.
Girl, I've never seen Harry Potter.
Neither. Did you say Harry Potter?
Did I?
I don't know. That is Harry Potter.
God, stop it. I did not. Okay, and if I did it, I just did, and that's fine.
Yeah, don't Google it though.
No. And then my eldest niece, Matilda, dressed up as Alvin from the Chipmunks.
That one I can relate to.
Yes. Very cool outfits.
Yeah.
So yes, I have to go pick them up.
Yeah. That sounds exciting.
And then drive home to Sydney.
Not as exciting though as her weekend of sport this weekend. I saw.
Oh, she's an
athlete. AFL Grand Final.
Yes, on Sunday she's got a AFL Grand Final. Tomorrow's her final game of rep netball.
Yeah.
She plays a few federations, but don't ask me exactly what they are. And then she made it into ACT athletics.
Lovely.
Oh my god.
I grew up playing AFL, so that hits home for me. And let her know that as soon as that ball bounces, or in that case it actually gets thrown up,
yes,
that's her ball. It's no one else's.
Okay.
So if someone else holds her ball, they have to give it back.
Oh my gosh.
That's how it works. If you have some tenacity, as soon as you step onto that white line, over that white line.
Oh my gosh,
that's my ball. Give it back to me.
Oh my gosh, this is gold. Okay,
So,
I will let her know that. She's my everything. So
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
So Jenna,
Amazing.
it's been lovely having you on. I'm sure I'll next time you're in Canberra.
Yes.
Deal.
I'll get back on the mic.
Speaking of retreats, there is a chance you might be at the next one in September. Otherwise, our next one's in Feb. And then level 2 is in April. We have dates. I haven't given them to you yet.
Oh.
So we've got dates.
Okay, let's chat.
For both of them.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning in as always.
Yes, thank you.
As always. Always. Yeah, I always
it's
suck
great
at,
that
like,
you're back on the mic.
I know I've enjoyed being back on. I really have. And I got some really lovely messages actually recently.
Yeah, because you're just made for it. You're so good. And I come back to, I mean, I'm so curious about everything that you have to say. You're such a knowledgeable man, but also having a long-term relationship with you, friendship with you has just been so amazing. Being able to see where you were when we first met to now, and like back on the mic is just so great.
Yeah,
your personality is so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's it feels, and these conversations is what I'm referring to as well. It feels like a nice pair of comfy old boots.
Yeah, right? Good. So,
good. Love you. Thanks for having on.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. I always suck at signing this stuff off. Please like, subscribe, and also you can download my ebook. I don't have an ebook.
You don't.
I've got a book.
How do you not have an ebook? You've got a book. You know.
I've written plenty of ebooks, so I'm like,
all right.
Okay, let's take that.
Execution.
What was I doing?
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Terrible. All right.
All right.
Thanks, team. Fish and pizza.
Thank you.
See you soon.